Okay, let's move along to Notre Dame commitments that are visiting other schools. I want to get your take on that in general in a couple of moments, but let's go ahead and go with kind of the news of the week. Let's start with Keon Keeley. We've talked a lot about Keeley in our conversations. Top pass rusher in the country out of Tampa, elite player, one of the best players in the class of 2023. And Mike, you can fill in the blanks, but he's been committed to Notre Dame for a very long time. We got word that he was going to visit Alabama last weekend. From the reporting of Blue and Gold Illustrated, I found out that was his second time he'd ever been to Tuscaloosa to check out Alabama. He's been to Notre Dame 5 or 6 times, so he's been fully locked in on Notre Dame. So what should we make of Keeley visiting Alabama in late July?
Yeah, Darren. So I've been covering Notre Dame football recruiting for 3 years now, and they land a lot of high-profile kids, right? They just do. Whether it was under Brian Kelly, Mark Sherman, they land a lot. But there's not a lot of recruitments like this one where it's, Alabama and Ohio State, where it's just a total dog fight. Like this one, where it's truly like I have no idea what's gonna happen. Kind of, we just don't get many of these. So, like, Notre Dame sources feel like they're gonna get Keeley, but then national sources and Alabama folks are like, oh, he's flipping. Like, so you just don't know what's going to happen. Again, my personal read on it is that he sticks with Notre Dame, but he could commit tonight or decommit tonight. Like, who the heck knows what's going to happen? So, listen, my recruiting coverage style, Darren, is very much like I'm your next door neighbor and we're just talking. Like that's what I like. I like to be raw and authentic, and I'm not gonna sit here and act like I know exactly what's gonna happen, or because I don't. And anyone trying to tell you they know exactly what's gonna happen with Keon Keeley or Peyton Bowen is either lying to you or they have one of those last names. So that's that's my read on it, Darren.
You mentioned Bowen. Let's go to Drake Bowen. What do you know about that situation?
Peyton Bowen. Drake Bowen is.
Excuse me, Peyton Bowen.
Yeah, Drake Bowen's 1,000,000% locked in. Glad you mentioned him. I did a story on him at blueandgold.com. Drake Bowen tweeted out a Lou Holtz quote recently, one of my favorites, and I asked him about that. So, yeah, definitely go to blueandgold.com and check that out. As far as Peyton Bowen goes, no relation, by the way. This one was crazy. This past weekend, I heard just about every rumor you could possibly think of. It was Oklahoma Friday. He visited, and then A&M on Saturday. All these are unofficials, by the way, so the young men are paying their way to get to campus. I had heard that Oklahoma was trying to keep him from going to A&M and getting him to stay at Oklahoma Saturday to try to flip him. His teammate is committed to Oklahoma. Like it was. I mean, Oklahoma thinks they're flipping them over the weekend. A&M thinks they're flipping them, and now we're recording this on Monday late afternoon, Darren, and still committed to Notre Dame, and affirmed that as much to the staff from what I'm told. But Notre Dame's just not out of the woods for either of these players yet. So, you're going to have to. I mean, Darren, you could seriously have me on your show every day, and we can talk about these two, and it'll be something different every day, like what the vibe is, but. I'm still rocking with Notre Dame for Keon Keeley and Peyton Bowen as well. Little bit more confident that Irish keep Keeley than I am Bowen, but we'll just have to see.
Well, I think the word commitment means
oh boy, here we go.
Different things to different people, and I got to admit, you're starting to change me a little bit on my thinking. And I know we've talked a little bit off the air about this. I'll say this up front, Mike. For a long time, being here at WSBT, following Notre Dame football for 20 plus years, I guess my thinking has always been, when you give the verbal commitment, I'm really not interested in hearing you go visit other schools. That's the way I kind of started, learning about Notre Dame football recruiting. And I learned a lot about recruiting from a former recruiting coordinator. So you can kind of see where my background in that thinking came from, because that's the way a coach would think. I mean, the last thing they want once you get a commitment, hey, don't go anywhere else. You're good with us. So that's where my thinking came from, being around a former recruiting coordinator. But I'm starting to change my thinking a little bit, and I'm going to let you kind of take it from here. There are so many fans that are following Keeley and Bowen so closely. There are a lot of people upset. Well, they've committed to Notre Dame. Why would they go to Alabama? Why would they go to Ole Miss? Why are they doing this? Why are they doing that? Offer a little, I don't want to say different perspective, but different from what I just established a couple of moments ago.
Yeah, we were talking about this off air, and like it's my thoughts on this are not popular with fans. It's just not. So it's definitely more old school of you commit, you don't do anything else like that. It's just changed. Like it's just more and more every single cycle. I started covering my first cycle covering recruiting was in 2014. Back then, kids wouldn't even tweet out their commitments. Reporters, we just did it for them pretty much. Like it was just a different day and age. Even from 2014 to now covering the 2023 and 2024 recruiting classes, like it's just changed. Like there's a lot more decommitments now. Kids are committing and getting offers earlier than before. So look, as far as decommitments go, these kids, they don't owe me or Darren Pritchett or Joe Schmo, Irish or Michigan or Ohio State fan. They don't owe them anything. They don't owe the coaching staff. Like they really don't. Like if they want to lock in an early commitment to hold a spot at a school they really like, but still want to look around, they're allowed to do that. And it's the coach's right to be like, hey, we're not going to allow you to do that. We're going to drop you. Like it's fair game out there. And it's just kind of the wild, wild west out here in recruiting. So look, for folks who, like, let's say Notre Dame loses a commitment and that upsets you. I get it. That player can help Notre Dame win a national title. I understand being upset that Notre Dame lost the recruit. But where I get frustrated myself is seeing on Twitter the frustration towards the recruits. You committed. Do you know what the word commitment means? You know what? Sometimes I commit to go to dinner with some friends and I decommit, or I was with Rivals for 9 years and I decommitted from Rivals and signed with On3. Darren, this doesn't apply to you because you've been with WSBT since probably before I was born, but a lot of people leave jobs. I mean, this might be an edgy thing to say, but what about divorce in our country? I mean, half of marriages end up divorced. That's a really big commitment that people break. So, but we're going to get upset about a 17-year-old deciding he wants to go to a different college. I mean, there's definitely right and wrong ways to go about the recruiting process. There's oftentimes that I'll even get frustrated, like, man, this recruit's doing this, but they're the other thing. But I mean, these kids committing to a school and still wanting to see other programs. I mean, who am I to say that they're doing something wrong? If you go through the NCAA bylaws or whatever, you're not going to find anything about these verbal commitments. They're just for coaches to count numbers and, for media and fans to keep track of what's going on. They're very much in the rules of what they're allowed to do.
I think also, Mike, just again, since I'm old and I've been working since you were born, so I feel really good about myself right now. But let's face it, social media has put such a bigger spotlight on all these kids. 20 years ago, I'm sure there were Notre Dame recruits that committed, went and visited Miami, went and visited Florida State, and it went under the radar and no one had any idea. I guess you could have called the Tom Lemming 900 line. Maybe you would have heard something about that. But, Mike, everything's just changed with social media, with so many different outlets trying to cover all these kids. I mean, we're going to find out a lot of details that 2 decades ago we never would have heard about. So it just feels like there's an extra spotlight, and it's not like these kids are any different than maybe kids 20 years ago. We just maybe didn't know about some of the things that went on 20 years ago.
I mean, wasn't Michael Jordan like smoking cigarettes on the airplane after a Chicago Bulls game? I mean, like, it's a lot of it's just changed. It really has. To think that I have a full-time job covering high school football recruiting for Notre Dame, and there's several others who'd have the same job as me at different outlets. Like, it's nuts. Like, you are 100% correct, Darren, that like there's so much more media attention on these kids. I mean, recruiting is just so much different. Just again, in the past 9 years I've been doing it, it's changed a ton. And going back to the 900 days with Tom Lanning, boy, yeah, it's changed a good bit, Darren. That, I mean, when I was in high school, I had DVD of my highlight tape, and when I would give it to college coaches at like a recruiting fair, I would type out the link to my where you could find my highlight tape and gave that to them. Like, you know, Twitter wasn't that popular back then. Like, I used to talk to college coaches via email. Like, it's just a lot different. Yeah. So yeah, recruiting's crazy. I mean, I'm probably not a popular guy right now with my takes, but again, I'm just your next door neighbor telling you how I feel.
Hey, I appreciate you being yourself and not changing just for the public perception. I appreciate that fact. You could just say, "Oh, this is terrible," and play to the fans, but you don't do that, and I appreciate that. So don't change. Promise?
Yeah, no promises. I'm just kidding.
Hey, one more closing question for you. Just since we're about a week and a half removed from the old barbecue, you think anything big's going to come from that in the coming few weeks or anything? Or would you say that, I know you always say never, so I'm going to back myself into a corner, but with football games starting across the country, high school wise, I would assume the commitments might slow down a little bit at this point. Never say never.
I would put the over under at commitments before the Ohio State game at like 3.5, maybe 4, something like that.
Oh.
So I think we're going to see more news for sure. That barbecue cookout thing, Darren, I know you love the reports about how the food was. I don't have much there. I heard the mac and cheese was really good, but that's all I've got. Yeah, the cookout was really good, Darren, for the 2024 class. There's, off the top of my head, at least 3 players I think the Irish will get from that group.